What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Bucks, another post-game episode after the Bucks just dust off the Magic again. And we're used to seeing this time after time. Thankfully, they won't have to play Orlando again because these matchups, I think, if they had to play 6 times, it might turn into an absolute brawl. You can see the man next to me, Mitchell Maurer, hasn't been on YouTube before. Has been on the audio version of this podcast many times. We're going to break down the game with Orlando. More health and safety protocol stuff. We can't have an episode without bringing it up. Then we might just discuss some stuff from this year because it is the last podcast of 2021. So we're going to have some fun. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Bucks. I'm your host, Kane Pittman. You can see and hear me on this show daily and find my work over at ESPN. And joining me, as I mentioned, he hasn't for a little while here, Mitchell Maurer, a familiar voice, though, and you know his name from Twitter and also from brewhoop.com, where Frank first became a famous Twitter member in among Bucks fans for sure. But today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Check out prizepicks.com and use the promo code NBA or go to your app store and download the app today. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. We'll get into that a little bit later. And we thank you for making Locked Up Bucks your first listen of every single day. I mentioned it the other day, but we had a couple of days off here. It's just chaos in the world right now, Mitchell, and I wasn't able to get to a podcast. People are asking, where's the pod? I'm waking up. Where's the post-game? So we're back here with post-game Locked On Bucks. Milwaukee put up 136 points against, I don't know, it's the Orlando Magic, but I don't know who's playing. I don't know half of these players on the Orlando roster here. But first and foremost, how you doing, man? It's been a while. And welcome to YouTube.
No, I'm doing great. Thanks again for having me. I personally wish I'd stayed on the audio-only version, but that's just because I don't have.
Me too.
This is my workspace because I'm still working from home because of the pandemic that's still going on, and this is it. This is all the background that I get is just these glass doors and this blank wall. I don't have the setup behind me the way that you do or the way that I know that Frank does. I need to upscale a little bit over here just to get something for when this happens, if this will ever happen again.
Well, it depends on your performance ultimately, but we'll. I did, and it was late notice, we should say as well. Frank is driving back to Wisconsin, so he tells me. I'm a little bit suspicious that he just couldn't be bothered watching the Bucks play the Orlando Magic again. But I know he listens to the podcast, so he'll definitely call me out about that when he's back in the new year. But I mentioned it, 136 to 118. Miraculously, the Milwaukee Bucks now are 24-13 on the season. I just read this stat on Twitter. At this stage last year, or in the similar point in the season last year, obviously there was a different start date, but last year they were 23-14. This year they're 24-13. I don't know how it's possible that this team could have a better record than last year's team when you consider everything they've had to go through. Maybe they have been benefited by a little bit of an easier schedule and also the fact that every other team is decimated as well. But nonetheless, it's remarkable to see that they're 24-13 and they've been able to figure this out after a 6-8 start.
Well, you think back to how long that this core group has been together, even before the additions that kind of helped put them over the hump last year when they won the championship. That continuity has really paid off when it comes to your main drivers like Giannis and Khris and Pat Connaughton being available, being able to do what they do, and then all the pieces kind of working around them. They've got a system and it works well. I know last year there was a lot of strife, let's say, because the record was suffering as they were actively experimenting and using the regular season as a lab. They're probably not doing that as much this year intentionally. Any experimentation they're doing is out of necessity because, like you mentioned, they've gone through long stretches while they're missing some of their main guys, just like almost every other team in the league. But when you have players of the caliber of Giannis Antetokounmpo, who put up 33, 12, and 5 tonight, and that's a meh night for him, which we really need to get away from doing, Because even though it happens so often that he has these monster stat lines and these dominant performances, we keep taking it for granted. But he's the engine that moves this team forward and keeps them on the right side of the win-loss column, even on these late December matchups against the lowly Orlando Magic, who had maybe 5 or 6 of their regular players available tonight. It's madness out there.
I saw a tweet, and this is completely off the top of my head, and I was half asleep as I was scrolling through Twitter when I first woke up. So if this isn't 100% accurate, then I'm taking no responsibility for what I'm about to say. But I did read a tweet or a table, a stat, whatever you want to call it, that said that minutes played by replacement players or hardship players so far this season, I think Orlando, this was prior tonight, was at around 500 minutes, and the team in second was, I think it was the Lakers, and they were at like 244. So like double what any other team has. I mean, it's just insane. And this Orlando team wasn't all that competitive to start with anyway. But Giannis didn't even get to 31 minutes tonight. So 30 minutes, 55 seconds. He did look pretty winded. And I think part of the reason why he looked winded at the end of the game was because he was hell-bent on, again, destroying anyone in his sight. And it all starts with Mo Wagner, who is just...
as well he should be.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, he is pissed off Giannis for a lifetime of matchups that they play. Giannis is going to want to kill him. But I do want to discuss, and we kind of moved into this a little bit on the podcast with Camille yesterday, but we were DMing during the game with Eric and Frank and Dean, as we do. And I said, Boogie is right on the edge here, and Mo Wagner is here. And maybe part of me thought, this might actually be a bit of relief for me that Boogie's out there, because Boogie's going to take all his anger out on Mo Wagner rather than Giannis. Giannis came out in the fourth quarter, still wanted to kill this man with basketball moves, I should say. But Boogie Cousins was a little, I wasn't 100% certain. I thought he might lose the plot a little bit there. He did pick up a tech, but this guy is just annoying, and he has got this whole Bucks roster pissed off.
No, he resorts to all these antics that it's the sort of thing where it's not necessarily against the rules to, throw yourself on the ground and become a tripping hazard when somebody is, driving the ball towards you and you're not strong enough to hold your own ground because you're just not that guy, or to, just let your elbow fly out a little bit further, or just all these little things that he does to needle the opposition and get under their skin, which there's a certain element of gamesmanship to that. Like if you get your opponent off their game because you're being the literal worst, okay, like you might be able to win a game or two that way. You don't win respect that way, but if that's not what he's after, then I guess it doesn't matter to him. But no, Mo Wagner is the absolute worst. I'm sure that if he ever ended up in Milwaukee uniform, we would do an about face and try to find the good parts about what his game offers. I think it would. I can't think of anybody where it would be harder to enter into that level of self-delusion to like turn it all the way around and actually start pulling for him. Like somebody like Marcus Smart. I can get behind Marcus Smart if he ever somehow ended up in Milwaukee. Like that, he does a lot of useful things, especially he's improved as a playmaker and is not a woeful shooter anymore. Like there's stuff to like there. I struggle to think of any redeeming qualities of Mo Wagner. And just if John Horst happens to be listening, just don't ever fall for it. If it ever comes up, just don't do it. It's not worth it.
I don't think that Giannis, I mean, you mentioned obviously Marcus Smart, but I don't think Giannis would ever allow it to happen, first of all.
That's a good point.
I don't think that he's ever coming to Milwaukee as long as Giannis is here. And I think we're all totally fine with that. The Bucks just continue.
Maybe that's why he's so mad at the Bucks, and maybe that's why he does the things that he does. Maybe it's not out of gamesmanship or trying to get it. Maybe it's just hurting. We never thought of that.
I can't really say that I've watched the Magic at all outside of these games, so I'm not sure.
Likewise.
I'm not sure if that's the case. One other thing I will mention, though, Cole Anthony's pretty active on the sidelines, isn't he? I actually don't mind. I mean, obviously everyone loves it when the bench is engaged and into it. And honestly, it seemed like Khris Middleton and the Bucks players were kind of laughing at him as well. So there wasn't anything, I don't think, malicious or anything, but he was talking a little bit of trash, and it's just very noticeable for a guy that's out. I think he's out with a foot or an ankle injury. He was really up and down the sidelines all night long. It's just interesting to see.
Maybe it's a part of his rehab. Maybe he's just testing it out while he's not on the active roster. That's fine. A line that I pulled from Seth Partnow's book that I put a review up on Brew Hoop yesterday for. Excellent book. You should definitely check it out when you can. But a line that applies to that is don't ever mistake activity for achievement. So take that with how you will, Cole Anthony.
That's true. And by the way, that book is still on a boat, I think, out to Australia. So it'll get out here at some point. I ordered it a long time ago, but we'll see. But we already mentioned Boogie Cousins. There was a number of contributors off the bench for the Bucks in this one. And you've been hearing me tell you about Prize Picks for months. And this is where it comes in, because if you haven't signed up, Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. And if you've not checked it out, you've been missing out. I'm telling you, you're going to love this app for NBA and mixed spots pick'ems. As we move into the new year, there's plenty of games to get involved with. Prize Picks has the best NBA DFS prop game on the market. It offers more NBA props than any other DFS prop operator and offers all the superstar players as well as the bench players like your Wes Matthews, like your DeMarcus Cousins that only record spot minutes here and there, 10 to 15 minutes, but pick up those stats. You can check out those props with those guys, which makes it a little bit fun, particularly when you're dealing with a deep team like the Milwaukee Bucks. So all the users that deposit and use the promo code NBA will receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks also allows mixed sport entry. So whether it's you want to combine some Packers stuff and some Bucks stuff, you can absolutely do that. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. Prize Picks is safe and offers fast withdrawals. Just go to prizepicks.com today and use the promo code NBA, or go to your app store and download the app. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. If you're not playing Prize Picks, you honestly don't know what you're missing. All right, we'll talk about the Locked On Now podcast as well as we keep it rolling here. And you'll see me do these little clips. If you follow me on Twitter, I'll do those little 2-minute videos after the games. If you wake up in the morning after you listen to Locked On Bucks, if you want to just get a quick recap from every Locked On podcast around the league, they put it into one podcast, so you can check that out. That's the Locked On Now podcast. But speaking of Boogie Cousins, let's keep it rolling with him. He's been a feature of conversation the last few weeks for obvious reasons, and we've spoke about the date that's coming up, this January 7th deadline. I honestly am at the point where I find it hard to believe that they're not going to retain his services moving forward. He had another 15 points tonight, 13 points in the third quarter, and I get it. There's always people that are quick to say, well, they're playing the Magic. Who cares? Well, what? He can't do anything else. He can play really poorly against those Orlando Magic, though, and then you'll be quick to say that he's playing like shit. But if he's playing well against the Magic and he has a 13-point quarter, I think it's noteworthy. And I think the interesting thing tonight, and Zora Stevenson asked him after the game and said, you were looking athletic out there. He started cracking up laughing. He said, I'm not used to being saying that I looked athletic. But Mo Wagner, again, this is not the Mo Wagner podcast. It's a Bucks podcast, Looked On Bucks podcast, but we have to keep bringing him up. I think he got him so pissed off that he found a bit of extra spring in those legs. He had the putback dunk. He had that spin and one-handed dunk, which actually didn't count because he was fouled beforehand. He had the big block. He was looking really agile, perhaps more agile than I thought was capable.
Yeah, there's a lot to like about what Cousins showed this evening, especially if he is going to be content in a lesser role once Brook Lopez does eventually come back. Because, yes, it is a December game against the Magic. It's not going to be the same as an April or May game against the Sixers or the Nets or some other Eastern Conference team in the playoffs. But that extra level of agility that he had when he was younger and that he had seemingly lost for a while because of the injuries and the fact that he's a little bit older, it's a sign that he's really rounding into shape. And getting to the point where he is going to be productive and able to do the things that he's certainly talented enough to do and skilled enough to do, whether his body is capable of putting him in those spots to actually do it is what he's been struggling with. And, speaking of spots, the fact he did put up 5 fouls in his 16 minutes of action, which has been a normal theme of his time with the Bucks. It's not like he doesn't know what he's doing. Like, he's a smart guy. He's a smart defender. Not a great defender, but he's a smart defender. Like, he knows where he's supposed to be. He just doesn't get there where, as quickly as he probably would expect to do. He's got a, long wingspan. He's got a ton of strength, but he fouls way too much. He fouls way too much. And that's going to be the big thing that keeps him in a deep reserve role once Brook Lopez comes back. But for now, when your only real bigs alongside Giannis are Boogie and Bobby Portis, who's also having a great year, like you kind of take the good with the bad, and the fact that he is able to produce that many points in limited playing time, and kind of add that element of, I guess, heft is really the best way to put it. Like Giannis is a physical force, but he doesn't have the same kind of heft that somebody like Brook has, or somebody like DeMarcus Cousins has, and that there is value to that. Maybe not a ton, but it's definitely something. Personally, I would love to see him stay through the end of the year. I think he's more than proven that he can handle it, as long as he fits in with the locker room, which we have no reason to believe that he doesn't, and he's willing to accept a lesser role, which I would imagine they've already talked to him about. Like it should be a great opportunity for him to help support the team through what hopefully will end up being a repeat run.
Again, I'm terrible at remembering who tweeted these things, but again, I saw a tweet a couple of days ago that basically said something along the lines of Boogie Cousins fouls on every single defensive play. It's just a matter of whether or not the official blows the whistle. And it's kind of the reverse of Giannis in the offensive end. He gets fouled on every play. Is he going to get to the free throw line on every play? I'm not sure. But there was a stretch in the game tonight, and again, it's the Magic. But you talk about that size where he had a couple of and ones, and I was like, well, he doesn't bring defensively what Brook does, which is why Brook's been so important to this team. But he does give the team this sort of this post presence if they wanted to go down that path where he can get to the free throw line, he can score down low. We know he's still super skillful. We'll see. I mean, plenty of question marks there, but it is fun when he plays really well and he's enjoying himself. It's fun to watch. One question that I did have, and this man continues to be a flamethrower since he came to Milwaukee. It's the other player that the Bucks have recently signed, Wesley Matthews, keeps knocking down those threes. We know that his grandma passed away last week. He's spoken a lot about that, and that's been inspiring him. And I tell you what, he's been knocking down the threes since that first night where he had a real breakout performance offensively when he came back from the health and safety protocols. But he seems to be, and it shouldn't be a great surprise. I mean, he spoke that he didn't exactly enjoy his time with LA, but he does just seem to be, it might be just me, like looking for something that's not really there, but he looks like he's just having more fun than I remember him having his first time around. And I don't know whether that's the fact leaving the team, then coming back with so many familiar faces. He obviously gets along well with these guys. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but he looks really relaxed. He looks like he's having fun. And again, he's another guy that I wasn't sure when they signed him, but I can't really see them letting this guy go.
No, I agree. If it somehow came down to either Wes or Boogie, and I'm a longtime Boogie Cousins fan, but I would actually rather them keep Wes if they had to choose between the two.
That's only because you live in Sacramento now and you're trying to stick up for Kings fans who might be still a little salty. I don't know, dude. I don't know if Kings fans love or hate Boogie, by the way. Probably love.
I have no reason to believe that they don't still hold a lot of affection for him. I mean, think about it from the Sacramento point of view. Like, he's been their most relevant player that's actually meant something since the early 2000s. So I'm sure he has a lot of goodwill in the city. I've only been here for a few months, so I do want to ingratiate myself to the locals. But Wes Matthews has, even though he's definitely older, he was already old when he joined the Bucks the first time around, and he is definitely older now. But the environment that he's in now, the role that he's playing, that he's more than capable of doing, and the fact that he does have kind of a similar level of strength as a perimeter player, it's a similar dynamic, not to the same extent, of course, but similar dynamic as PJ Tucker in terms of Wes's ability to body up guys on the outside and be quick enough to still stick with them. He's able to guard up positions a lot more than some of the other Bucks players. Like, George Hill does a great job of guarding up, but he doesn't have that same sort of bulk behind him that Wes has. But he's shooting 48% from deep so far. It's only been 9 games, so it's a very small sample size. That's by far a high for him across his career. It's highest since his most recent high was back in 18-19, but this time between Indy, the Knicks, and the Mavericks. So he's bouncing around, and and after that is when he ended up with Milwaukee. He knows his role. He does have all those familiar faces. He, like any perimeter player that is a 3-and-D player, gets a ton of open looks playing with Giannis Antetokounmpo, because that's what Giannis does for teammates. He gets them open 3-point shots. And so if he's able to knock them down, and he's going to be incredibly useful to this team. And he's going to be way more useful than some of the people that they signed in the offseason, like Shemi Ojale, who I know wasn't available tonight, and has had just a really rough start to his tenure as a Buck. It might only last this season if he even finishes the season, but hasn't gone his way at all. Similar for Rodney Hood, who's been available more than Shemi, but not as impactful. And so Wes has really found a spot at the bottom end of the backcourt rotation, and he offers a lot of what the team needs. And the fact that he's happy doing it, and everybody's happy with having him around, not even if he wasn't a Wisconsin native, which he is, everything comes together for Wes Matthews just being a really good position going forward with this team.
Well, you mentioned him defensively and just the size that he has. And I remember the first time around with Milwaukee, I was almost shocked to be reminded on a nightly basis how strong this guy is defensively. Like, he's such a solid man. And honestly, the only way that I can think about, how he could have possibly built that size, obviously he works hard. He's in the gym. He's in the weight room. He's getting up shots. He's working out. But I assume he's also eating Built Bars. And it is the new year, or soon to be the new year. So that means New Year's resolutions. And if yours is about getting fit or eating healthier, like I'm sure Wes Matthews is, then make sure you include Built Bar in your plan. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. I would say better than a candy bar. Built Bar makes it easier to stick to your resolution because it tastes so good, you'll want to eat it. Unlike other protein bars, which can be chalky, waxy, or taste like a chemical spill. That sounds disgusting. You want to eat healthy, but it gets so boring. By week 3, you might be thinking this is just not worth it. That's not going to happen with Built Bar. They're healthy for you as well, as we know. So here's an idea for the new year. Go to all your secret treat stashes at home, in the pantry, at the office, in the car, whatever. Throw them all out and replace them with Built Bars. So when you're craving a snack or a treat, you can reach for something that's healthy and tastes incredible. All you have to do is go to built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15, and you'll get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. Well, you mentioned Shemi Ojeleye, and we should, Bucks fans were a bit worried about this with the Magic and their COVID outbreak at the moment, but Shemi Ojeleye has gone into the protocols, so I don't think there's too much to add to that, but all I will say is we will just wait and see what happens here. The Bucks back home, New Year's Day, they've got a home game, if I've got that right. Saturday night, they're hosting the Pelicans, another team that's been struggling, so another opportunity to pick up a win there, which would be nice. As we move on from this game, though, we should point out, and we do this often, you mentioned at the top that we overlook Giannis sometimes, but we also overlook Khris and Jrue as well. They had 80 points between them tonight, 25 for Jrue with 7 assists, 3 steals as well. Middleton had 22 points. They had their different moments where they took over the game. One thing that I'll never get over with Jrue Holiday, and I tweeted about it during the game, whereas if he has the ball and he's driving to the basket or he's in a transition play, the defender almost always latches onto his right hand as a right-hander. They obviously haven't read the scouting report. He gets him exactly where he wants him, gives him a little bump, lays it in with the left hand. People just can't figure it out. And I understand why he does everything right-handed. It's so confusing that he always wants to go to the left. But it's a thing of beauty when he does it. And he's been playing really good basketball of late. Very fun to watch. Leading into All-Star period, I might add.
Mm-hmm. Again, we talked a lot about strength when we, talking about Cousins and Matthews. Jrue is an incredibly strong person, not just physically, but mentally as well. And as a guard, there's very few people that are able to withstand that. And so when he does get them in that position, and the instinct is to cover the dominant hand when he gets close to the basket. And so when he gets that little bump, which is never enough to warrant a call, but is enough to create space. Like, it's too easy. It's just too easy for him. And it's a go-to move that he's mastered over the course of his career that is kind of a safety valve for the Bucks offense when they need it. If Giannis isn't able to get drives going, or if he gets a little jump shot happy, kind of similar to Khris's turnaround shot on the baseline, which he's really good at. It's one of those things that is all reliable. That maybe if you does it every trip down, then maybe the opponent will react differently and take it away. But by then the damage is already done, and you can start moving it around and getting other people involved and kind of move away from it if and when you have to. But Jrue is, I don't know if he'll actually make the All-Star team, which I think he's been a 1 or 2-time All-Star. I think it was just the 1 year in Philly, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. He certainly deserves the recognition. I don't think he'll get it as an all-star player. He'll get it for all defense, again, because he's one of the best defensive players in the league. But whether or not he'll score enough honestly, to get the attention from fans. I think there's certain factions of the media that does recognize his excellence, and I would challenge any competent coaching staff in the league to deny just how impactful he is on both ends and why he wouldn't deserve a spot over, say, Zach LaVine or I'm trying to think of other guards in the East that are, at least in terms of all-star voting, would be on a similar level. Like, I'll take Jrue over Zach LaVine 10 times out of 10. No question about it.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of sentiment for the Bulls this year. And then those two are obviously putting up lots of points, which may count to something there. All right, I mentioned this is the last pod of the year. So, as we're sitting here now, Mitchell, and you've been a big part of this through the year, 1.26 million downloads audio-wise. We started YouTube in late October, around the start of the season. We're up over 100K views on YouTube as well. So all told, that's a hell of a lot of people that have tuned in, watched, listened, had it as background noise while they're doing stuff around the house and maybe not really listening, but it's a lot of people that have at least had Locked On Bucks on. So we really appreciate it. And I have to ask you, Mitchell, and it might be a simple answer, but people have different memories. What was your favorite Bucks moment or memory of 2021? And again, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to go with the easy answer here.
No, the easy answer for me, it's not the championship.
Okay.
It actually isn't the championship. I know that one of my favorite Locked On moments, that's what I thought you were going with the question, was Frank doing the pod when he was walking around downtown Milwaukee the night of Game 6 when the Bucks won the title. And that was a ton of fun. That Phoenix series was a ton of fun. But the moment that I'll never forget in terms of, where I was and how I was feeling watching it was the very end of overtime of Game 7 of Bucks Nets in the second round when Kevin Durant missed that jump shot at the very, very end of the last Brooklyn possession with Jrue Holiday guarding him. And when that fell short, that was when I said to myself, oh my God, they're actually going to win. And I think that was the moment where the team kind of had that a similar level of realization, because that series was a battle, an absolute slugfest. It was hugely entertaining. Absolutely just a massive achievement for the sport in terms of being able to just show that as a product. But when he missed that shot and the Bucks were able to maintain possession with the lead and take that series in order to move on to the Eastern Conference Finals, it felt like there was a slight shift around the team in terms of what they were capable of and how they would respond to adversity, because that entire series was nothing but adversity. And in years past, like you think about the Miami series in the bubble.
I didn't get that.
No, I wasn't talking. I wasn't talking to you, Siri. I wasn't talking to you at all. We think about what happened in Miami in the bubble. Adversity struck, and the Bucks fell short. The previous series, up 2-0 against Toronto, and then they ran into adversity in that series, and the Bucks fell short. And any time previously, whenever the Bucks were at a crossroads where they could break through and take the next step as a franchise or fall short again, they would always fall short. They've been falling short for 50 years. And it was that moment that really kind of like shines through after, everything that we've seen in 2021 from this team, as like that shift. Like I think Frank said something similar on the pod, not too long ago. Like that's the moment that just really stands out because something changed when that shot missed.
Yeah, it's interesting. If I had to pick a moment, I would have said Game 7 as well, just because it honestly, to me, it felt like the most unrealistic outcome to imagine. Because, once you get to Game 6 with the title, we saw what Giannis was doing. It's not that I obviously have watched Bucks for long enough to not assume that they were going to win that game, but it felt like everything was in their favor, and it felt like everything was going downhill for the Bucks. Giannis was looking absolutely unstoppable. But winning the Game 7 on the road, it just didn't seem like something that was actually going to happen. And then don't forget, you had that moment at the end of regulation where Brook Lopez, I guess, just forgets the time or whatever happens. So once it goes to overtime, you think, okay, well, that's it. There's no way they're winning this game. That was the one shot they had. So for them to do it was just such a feeling of relief. And it was almost like we really have to go back and play now. And PJ Tucker said something similar when he did the podcast with JJ Redick. He said we were kind of in the locker room thinking we still had 2 series to go here. And just the roller coaster from that win and the excitement we had when we did that pod. And then a few games later, thinking we're not going to see Giannis play for 12 months. And then a few days later, thinking Giannis is back, but now you're down 2-0 again. And then you go and win the title. So the roller coaster of the playoffs obviously is something that I'll never forget. And talking through it with everyone that was on the pod through that time as well was super fun. So anyway, it's not to say we're not going to talk about that championship again, because obviously we're going to continue to do that. But it was a pretty crazy year, and certainly not something that I ever thought was going to happen, to be honest, watching this team for a long time. So it was awesome. We appreciate everyone that's come along for the ride with us. Mitchell, I appreciate you taking the call here late notice and making your your first YouTube appearance here. And I should say before we wrap it up, make sure you do check out the Locked On Bets podcast as well with your boy Q and handicapping expert Lee Sterling. They've got you covered if you're into that type of thing. But Mitchell, you're a star. I appreciate you.
Stop. You're too kind. Too kind, Kane.
Okay, fix the background then.
You know what? That's fine. That's fair. I'll take that feedback. No, appreciate you very much for the invitation. And I hope you have a safe New Year's celebration. Hope everybody listening has a safe New Year's celebration, especially in the times that we're living in, which continue to baffle and confound. But here we are. Just make sure you make it back to wherever you're staying after you dispense with the revelry.
Yep, I'll be at home. There won't be much going on for me. So
I'll be at home too. I'm not going anywhere.
So there's not going to be anything too crazy. So I'll be safe. I'll be here in a couple of days' time when the Bucks play the Pelicans. Join us for the post-game show as Milwaukee look to make it, I think, 6 in a row. I think I've got that right. They're rolling at the moment. They're 24-13, 11 games over 500. Hard to believe, but they're looking pretty good. So as Mitchell said, stay safe. We'll catch you guys after the